Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Hey, we're back. We want to do another video. And first and foremost, we want to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody keeping the Sabbath today. Today is February 27th, 2025, Thursday. According to the calendar of the Most High, Genesis 1:14. It is the last Sabbath of the 29th of the last Sabbath of the 11th biblical month, being the 29th day, and it is also conjunction day. So we wanted to do a video as far as conjunction is concerned to give some edification, some understanding on conjunction. So I want to give a definition of conjunction. And conjunction is a configuration in which two celestial bodies, meaning the sun as well as the moon, have their least apparent separation, meaning that this is the point, the last Sabbath of every biblical month is the point that after the light has gone out of the moon, the sun then recharges the moon and puts the light back into the moon. So what you have to understand too, in order to really understand this, is that every biblical day starts in the morning at the rising of the sun. And the sun makes his course and keeps the same pace every day. He never changes his course. Hey, can you give me 1 Ezra 4 and verse 34?
It is 1 Ezra chapter 4, verse 34, and it reads, O ye men, are not women strong? Great is the earth, high is the heaven, swift is the sun in his course. For he compasseth the heavens round about, and fetcheth his course again to his own place in one day.
So in the course of the sun, as he runs his course, he fetches his course in the course of one day, meaning that the sun always has this, he's consistent. He has the same rate of speed every day. This is why sometimes we see the moon out during the daytime opposed to it being out at the night, because the sun is on a specific course. So give me another precept for that, Ark. Give me Enoch 69 and give me verse 24 and 25.
This is Enoch chapter 69, verse 24, and it reads, And through that oath the sun and moon complete their course and deviate not from their ordinance from eternity to eternity. Verse 25, And through that oath the stars complete their course, and he calls them by their names, and they answer him from eternity to eternity.
So in verse 24, it says, and through the oath, the sun and the moon complete their course, and they deviate not from their ordinances. So whatever the sun and the moon was created to do, they do that and they deviate not from it. So like I said, as far as the conjunction is concerned, when it's the last Sabbath of every biblical month, that is the period of time, again, for the definition of conjunction. It's a configuration in which the celestial bodies, the sun and the moon, have their least apparent separation, meaning that this is the point, like I said, the last Sabbath of every biblical month is the period when the light of the moon goes out completely. This is when the sun recharges the moon. So I want to get a precept on that. Let's pick that up at Enoch 77. I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. Enoch 77. And we'll start at verse 4 through 6. Go ahead.
Is Enoch 77, starting at verse 4, and it reads, In the orb of the sun there is a seventh portion of light, which is added to it from the moon.
Go ahead.
By measure it is put in until the seventh portion of light of the sun is departed. They enter into the western gate, circuit by the north, and through the eastern gate go forth over the face of heaven.
So this verse is saying that on the last day of the biblical month, it says the sun as well as the moon, they set in the west. So at that point, that is when conjunction takes place, because the scriptures, the sun and the moon rise in the east and set in the west. So when it sets in the west with the sun, this is when the sun is recharging the moon. Go ahead and pick it up at verse 5, Art.
This is Enoch 77, verse 5, and it reads, When the moon arises, it appears in heaven, and the half of the seventh portion of light is all which is in it.
So when the moon sets with the sun on the last day of the biblical month, this is when the sun recharges the moon, right? So it's going to tell us up it charges it. Pick it up at verse 6, huh?
This is Enoch 77, verse 6, and it reads, in 14 days, the whole of his light is completed.
So right here, the moon and the sun set together on the last day of the biblical month. The sun begins at that point of conjunction to charge the moon from that point up until the 14th day. Drop down and give me verse 13, huh?
This is verse 13, and it reads, all the time that the moon is in progress with its light, it is poured into it in the presence of the sun until its light is in 14 days completed in heaven.
So again, it's saying that on conjunction day, the last day of the biblical month, the sun and the moon set together. At that point, the sun recharges the moon up until the 14th day. That's what this is saying here. So what we have to understand also is that when it comes to the moon, when the light of the moon goes out, the moon immediately starts to illuminate from that point moving forward, right? And so to make this point too as well, just as when the sun and when the moon rises with the sun on new moon day, the new moon cannot be seen because, like Genesis 1:16 says, he made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser to rule the night. So when the moon, which is the crescent, which is the new moon, rises with the sun, the greater light, which is the sun, outshines the new moon. For example, just like every day, the stars are always present, but we don't see them because the greater light, which is the sun, is outshining them. Once we start to see the stars in the heavens as well. So the point of that, and is why I'm saying, is because some people say that they can't spot the moon until it's in the western sky, which is absolutely correct. And the reason that you have to understand this is that it doesn't magically appear in the west. It rises on the day of the new moon. The moon rises with the sun, and it travels all day from east to west. When the sun sets in the west, which evening simply means sunset, at that point, the new moon, which is the crescent, becomes visible to us. So that's a key point that we want to make a point of that as well. So let's go over to, let's pick it up also, Enoch 77, and let's go down to verse 19 and 20, I believe. I want to go there. Let me pull that back up. Enoch 77. If you got it, go ahead, Doc. I'm going to pull it up.
Okay, this is Enoch chapter 77, verse 19. And it reads, during 3 months, it affects in 30 days each month its period. And during 3 more months, it affects it in 29 days each. These are the times in which the effects its decreased in its first period and in the first gate, namely in 177 days.
So another part to understand as far as conjunction is concerned is that when it comes to the moon, some months are 29 days and some months are 30 days, like verse 19 is saying. So it said in 3 months, there's let me get my pen up. So it says during 3 months, you have a period of 29 days, right? Right here. And it says again, in 3 months, you have a period of 30 days, is what this is saying, right? So together, that's 177 days in a 6-month period. This is what this is saying, right? Pick it up at verse 20, huh?
Verse 20 reads, and at the time of its going forth during 3 months, it appears 30 days each, and during 3 more months, it appears 29 days each.
So what this is saying is that in a 6-month period, the moon is going to come in at 29 days for 6 months, and it's going to come in also at 30 days for 6 months. So together it said 177. So 177 times 2 is 354 days as far as the moon is concerned. This is what this is saying, right? So that's something else to understand. So when we go back to to Enoch. Yeah, let's pick it up where it's talking about when the whole of his light is. Let's go pick it up at Enoch 77 and verse 17. I want to show this point too.
Enoch 77, verse 17.
Yes, Enoch 77, verse 17. We'll pick it up there. Go ahead.
Enoch 77, verse 17, and it reads, where light comes to the moon, there again it decreases until all its light is extinguished, and the days of the moon pass away.
So it says of the moon, it says where the light comes to the moon, there again it decreases or it wanes until all its light is extinguished. So again, if you extinguish something, that means that it is put out. Just like if you have a fire and you have a fire extinguisher, you put it out. So it says when its light is extinguished, the days of the moon pass away, meaning that the days of the moon come to an end. So this is talking about the dark moon. Let's pick it up at verse 14. I'll get some more on this.
This is Enoch 77, 14, and it reads, and when it is wholly extinguished, its light is consumed in heaven. And on the first day, it is called the new moon. For on that day, light is received into it.
So it's telling us right here that when it's wholly extinguished, meaning that the light is gone, it's consumed in heaven. So it says it's consumed in heaven. So right here it says on the first day, my pen at, it says on the first day, my pen up, on the first day, it is called the new moon right here. So it says on that day, light is received into it. So that's telling us right here that the dark moon would be excluded as being the new moon because it says specifically that the dark moon is the end of the month, right? So let's pick it up. Give me Sirach 43 and verse 8. So we're establishing the concept or the process of conjunction. And so this is the process at the end of the month when the light comes back into the moon. And this is after the sun and the moon has set together and the sun recharges the moon up until the 14th day. This is what this is talking about. Let's pick it up at Sirach 43 and verse 8.
This is Sirach chapter 43, verse 8, and it reads, the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven.
So right there, it says when the light is received back into it, this is talking about the crescent being the new moon, which is the first day, like Enoch 77 said. So again, it said the moon, some months are 30 days, and some months are 29 days. So I just want to show that right there as well. And show this conjunction and explain this as well. Okay. So when it comes to a biblical month, we have to understand that some months are 29 days, as we read in Enoch, and then some months are 30 days, right? This is what this is saying. So what we have to understand is that whether it's a 29-day month or a 30-day month, the month is first established by the new moon here and the new moon here, both being the first day of the month. Like we just read in Sirach 43 in verse 8, it said the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully. So as Enoch said, when the light is received into it, it is the first day. So that would be new moon day, according to the precepts that we just read. So we have to understand this as far as conjunction. On the last day of a biblical month, whether it's a 29-day or a 30-day month, the last day of either month, the light is going to be wholly extinguished in the month of a 29-day month or a 30-day month. It doesn't matter. But and also I want to make this point too, because some people say that sometimes there's 3 or 4 days of dark moon, and that's scripturally, that's incorrect. The understanding for that is that once the full moon comes here on either month, that is a light that decreases in its perfection. The perfection of the moon is the fullness of the moon. So as she decreases, when she decreases and starts going down, the times of her coming up in her rise slows down. So although we look at it towards the end of the month and it appears that the moon is dark for several days, as the moon starts to decrease from the 15th day, the moon is still rising on these days, but the time of her rise becomes later and later. So this may be at 12 o'clock. Well, I know for a fact on the third Sabbath, which is the last quarter moon, that moon is going to come up around 12 midnight. So as she continues to decrease, she's going to come up later and later. So while it looks like there's no moon on those particular days from here on out, there actually is a moon, but you have to go out very late or very early in order to see that moon. So again,
Exactly.
Right. So again, on as conjunction is concerned, when the sun and the moon set together, whether it's a 29-day month or whether it's a 30-day month, that is the period that the sun charges the moon, recharges the moon, like we read in Enoch, from that point up until the 14th day. It says her light becomes complete on the 15th day. So being that today is the last Sabbath of the 11th biblical month, which is Thursday, February 27th, today is the last Sabbath right here, which is the 29th day. So being that this month is the 29th day, the light has been wholly extinguished in the moon. So by default, if a month cannot be less than 29 days or more than 30 days, then with today being the last Sabbath of the 11th biblical month, tomorrow at the rising of the sun would automatically be new moon day by default. And this is the process of conjunction. So if it's a 30-day month, this is going to be the last Sabbath. The light is wholly extinguished. That would mean the next dawn at the rising of the sun would be new moon day in the case of a 30-day month. But regardless to what, the last Sabbath of a 30-day month is the 29th day. The last Sabbath of a 29 month is the 29th day. The only difference is that when it's a 29-day month, light is going to go out of the moon faster because it's a 29-day month. And from this point is conjunction. The light immediately goes back into the moon. The next day is new moon day by default. So on a 30-day month, the last Sabbath is the 29th day, but you have another day and that light is going to be wholly extinguished on that day. When that happens on this day here, the very next day that starts at the rising of the sun is new moon day from that point as well. So I just want to make that point.
And speak on that point about the dark moon is not new moon.
The dark moon, okay, for example, we read, go back to that.
Say that again, you broke up.
I said, go back to the point, Enoch, where it says when it's wholly extinguished.
Okay, this is Enoch 77, verse 14. And it reads, and when it is wholly extinguished, its light is consumed in heaven. And on the first day, it is called the new moon. For on that day, light is received into it.
Drop that. That was verse 14, right?
Yes.
Drop down, I think it was verse 19.
Verse 19, and it reads, during 3 months, it affects its 30 days.
Sorry, verse 17,
Okay, I'm sorry. This is Enoch 77, verse 17, and it reads, when light comes to the moon, there again it decreases until all its light is extinguished and the days of the moon pass away.
So right there, the dark moon is the end of the month, just like the scripture just said. So when we look at this, some people they try to discredit using the moon apps, but we see here on this moon app. And like I said, if this is the last Sabbath of the 11th biblical month, being the 29th day, as you can see here, right? And we see the light is wholly extinguished according to this moon app, right? And you see it's a waning crescent, meaning it's a light that decreases. So as the scripture just read, when it's wholly extinguished, the days of the moon come to an end. So this would exclude the dark moon as being the new moon, because we read in Sirach 43 and verse 8, it said the month is called after her name, a light that increases, right? So when the light comes back into the moon, like it says in Enoch, it says on that day is the first day. It is the new moon when the light is received into it. So according to this, today, like I said, is February 27th, 2025. And this is the last Sabbath of the biblical month, being the 29th day, as it says here. And we see, according to scripture, the light has completely gone out of the moon. So for those that try to disregard using moon apps, first and foremost, we go to the scriptures, and the scriptures clearly is telling us the dark moon is the end of the month. And we see right here that according to the moon app is just a witness to further prove that point, right? So I want to make this point as well too, because I've done posts before where I've said that tomorrow is the new moon, before it was physically seen, and I've had brothers come and they say, "Ak, you going off? How can you call a new moon before you saw it? You can't see it yet," and all of that. So I just want to go into scripture and show that it's possible to call the new moon prior to seeing it. It has absolutely nothing to do with physically seeing the moon first. So let's pick it up. Let's go into 1 Samuel chapter 20, and we'll pick it up at verse 5.
This is 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 5. And it reads, "And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I shall not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field until the third day at even."
So this is David, and he's telling Jonathan, he says tomorrow, meaning the next day, because every biblical day starts at the rising of the sun. So he's telling Jonathan, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king to meet, but I shall let me go and hide myself into the field until the third day. So this is David saying this. And the scripture says, let everything be established in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Pick it up at verse 18.
This is verse 18, and it reads, "Then Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty."
So this is David as well as Jonathan, both declaring the new moon prior to seeing it. So when I post, or anybody posts that tomorrow's the new moon and they haven't physically seen the moon, this is not anything new. This is what our forefathers did in scripture. And what you have to understand is that they understood this process of times. They understood that. So as we're coming back to the knowledge of the truth, the Most High is revealing these things to us. Hey, I'll grab Daniel 12:4 real quick. And we're gonna I'm gonna expound on this as well.
It's Daniel chapter 12.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, and it reads, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased."
So as knowledge is increasing, the Most High is revealing to us his true calendar, which is Genesis 1:14, and also with the process of conjunction. Because when we first came into the understanding of how to keep the Sabbath according to the luminaries, I ran out every new moon looking for the new moon until we learned the process of conjunction. Now I don't go out. Now every now and then I go out just to check myself and make sure it's good. But I don't typically go out on new moon night, on the evening of new moon, to look for the crescent, because we understand the process of counting the months, meaning that some biblical months are 29 days and some months are 30 days. And so we understand that the process of conjunction is that regardless of what month it is, the very next day at the rising of the sun is new moon day by default, because a biblical day cannot be less than 29 days or more than 30 days. So we understand this process, right? So give me Jubilees 23 and 26, because we have 2 witnesses here. Both David and Jonathan both said tomorrow is the new moon without physically seeing it first.
This is Jubilees chapter 23, verse 26, and it reads, "And in those days the children will begin to study the laws, and to seek the commandments, and to return to the path of righteousness."
So as we return to the path of righteousness, the Most High Yahuwah is revealing to us how to keep the Sabbath according to his calendar. And he's also revealing to us how we reconcile the month. And reconciling the month is by the new moon, but we reconcile it according to conjunction, which is by default the next day after the last day of either month is automatically new moon day. So this is what it's saying. So go back to 1 Samuel 20. I want to make a point of this because we had two witnesses where David and Jonathan both said prior to seeing it that the new moon was the next day, meaning tomorrow. So pick it up at verse 24. Huh?
This is 1 Samuel chapter 20, start at verse 24, and it reads, So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat.
So clearly both David and Jonathan said the new moon was the next day. They sat down to eat the next day at the rising of the sun. Pick it up at verse 25.
25, and it reads, And the king sat upon the seat as at other times, even upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty.
Go ahead.
Verse 26, and it reads, Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought, Something hath befallen him. He is not clean. Surely he is not clean.
So when David and Jonathan both said tomorrow's the new moon, we clearly see that tomorrow at the rising of the sun, it actually was new moon day. So again, they both claimed and proclaimed new moon day without seeing it physically, right? So we have some people that wait to spot the new moon and then they proclaim the new moon day. And scripturally, that's incorrect because when you do so, you're actually missing the new moon day celebration because it will show later is that the new moon as well as the Sabbath is both celebrated during the daylight hours, right? So if you wait for the next day, that is actually the second day of the month, which is our first of our 6 work days. Pick it up at verse 27 to prove that point out.
This is verse 27, and it reads, And it came to pass on tomorrow, which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, Wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to me neither yesterday nor today?
So when he says neither yesterday, meaning new moon, or the next day, which is the second day of the month. So the second day of our biblical month is the first day of our 6 work days prior to the first Sabbath of that particular month. So like I said, our forefathers and our foremothers, they understood this process. They knew how to reconcile time. So let's show that as well. Give me Jasher, and I'm going to pull that up on here so we can read with that.
And let me make this point while I'm going over to that too. Because we've talked about this numbers of times and things like that. And so I have to continue to make this point as well. Just because you don't see it, because the day that it is new moon, and those who are waiting to spot it may only be confirming it based off them citing it. But if those days were overcast and you didn't see it, it's not new moon the very first time you see it. You may see it on the 5th day. By that time, that's 5 days in. That moon is not going to be a crescent moon like the first sliver of light. It's not. And so it's not by virtue of you spotting it. And those of us who wait to see if someone is spotted in the region where they live and things like that, that can be a false sense of thinking that it is that based off them citing it. They knew how to observe the times and knew how to, just like Jonathan and David are conversing with each other. They knew it. They understood it. And so us coming back into the truth of the Most High's word, we have to get that understanding too. And this is the way in which we get it in the event that we do have overcast skies and cloudy and bad weather where we're not able to see that first light. We have to understand and know how to do that. And by going into these scriptures, this helps us get that understanding.
Exactly. That's a good point because we can't, if we're waiting to see it, and like the Ark is saying, because of weather conditions or whatever the case may be, if you don't see the moon, then you're waiting to sight the moon or spot the moon, and you're not able to see it, then you're going to go to the next day. And we just read in 1 Samuel 20 is that the first day that David's seat was empty was actually new moon day, and he wasn't there, and Saul didn't say anything until the next day. And he said, verse 27 again, and it came to pass on the morrow which was the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan, his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday, meaning new moon day, nor today, which is today, and in this case will be the first of our 6 work days towards the Sabbath. So that was a good point that the Ark made. So we can't rely on seeing it. And like I said, when I used to wait to see it, I've done that as well. I didn't see it the first night, and I counted the next night, and then as we went on, I saw that that was incorrect, and I had to end up switching back. So when you come and you get the understanding of conjunction. Conjunction helps us to make it to where we know exactly when new moon day is, because again, by default, after a 29 or a 30-day month, the very next dawn is new moon day by default. So I just want to show this. Also, like I said, our forefathers, they understood the process of conjunction and reading the times and all that. We're at a point where we're coming back to the understanding, like Daniel said, in the last day, knowledge going back and learning how to read the times and understand all this. So let's pick it up in Jasher, verse 53. I mean, chapter 53, rather. And we'll start at verse 18.
This is Jasher chapter 53, starting at verse 18. And it reads,
Go ahead.
And he ordered them to bring before him his map of the stars, whereby Joseph knew all the times. And Joseph said unto Benjamin, I have heard that the Hebrews are acquainted with all wisdom. Dost thou know anything of this?
So this is talking about the days of in Egypt during the famine, when Joseph was in second in charge under Pharaoh, and it says that Joseph knew his brothers, but they knew him not. So this is talking about Benjamin being here, and he's asking Benjamin. He's giving him a map of the stars, and he's saying that I heard that the Hebrews are acquainted with wisdom, and they know how to read these things. So he's asking Benjamin this, right? Pick it up at verse 19.
This is verse 19, and it reads, And Benjamin said, Thy servant is known also in all the wisdom which my father taught me. And Joseph said unto Benjamin, Look now at this instrument and understand where thy brother Joseph is in Egypt, who you said went down to Egypt.
So he gave him a book of the stars and whatever this instrument was, and he gave it to Benjamin, and Benjamin was able to decipher or discern where his brother Joseph was at in Egypt. Go ahead and pick it up at verse 20, y'all.
Verse 20, and it reads, And Benjamin beheld the instrument with the map of the stars of heaven, and he was wise and looked therein to know where his brother was. And Benjamin divided the whole land of Egypt into 4 divisions, and he found that he who was sitting upon a throne before him was his brother Joseph. And Benjamin wondered greatly, and when Joseph saw that his brother Benjamin was so much astonished, he said unto Benjamin, What hast thou seen, and why art thou astonished?
So again, our forefathers, they understood how to read the times. They understood the map of the stars, and whatever this instrument was, he gave it to Benjamin, and Benjamin was able to locate his brother Joseph, which was sitting on the throne in front of him. So this sounds like an ancient GPS type of thing, right? So they were able to discern the times, and they knew how to read that. So again, when we go back to 1 Samuel 20 and verse 5 and verse 18, where David and Jonathan both said tomorrow is the new moon, and we see clearly in scripture that the next day was new moon day. Now, the only thing that it doesn't give us the information of there is that if it was a 29-day month or if it was a 30-day month. But regardless to what it was, is that whatever month it was, that David and Jonathan, they said tomorrow is the new moon. It could have been a 29-day month. It could have been a 30-day month. But regardless of what it was, they said that tomorrow is the new moon without seeing it. So if it was a 29-day month, the very next day at the rising of the sun was new moon day. If it was a 30-day month, the very next day at the rising of the sun was new moon day as well. So that's the only information we don't get, but we see clearly in scripture that our forefathers, they understood how to discern the times and how to count the times and use these instruments, right? So this is what they're saying there. So I just want to make the
Let
point
me
of that. So let's pick it
let
up
me
at
make just one other point while you on that too, out real quick.
right?
Let me make this point. Okay, and so with this instrument that Joseph brought and his brother Benjamin used, it's no different than what we use as to determine when the month begins. I remember a time when me and Ak were having this discussion about new moon and things like that. And I think we saw like a second or third day moon or something like that. And we had this back and forth discussion. It wasn't a debate or us arguing. We were just trying to figure this thing out. And lo and behold, those apps allow us to see the percentages. And so we was able to take that percentage of what we saw on that third or fourth day and compare it to a a previous month or the following month and notice that the percentage of the new moon was much smaller than the percentage of a 3 or 4 day moon. So these instruments that we have at our disposal, these apps allow us to line ourselves up and get it right. So it was a learning process along the way to the point to where we can be like Jonathan and David. We know when new moon is because we have that understanding. But I'm just saying that these apps, these instruments that we have right now that we can use to gain a better understanding is no different from this instrument that Joseph brought to Benjamin, and Ben was able to decipher and interpret or tell where he was or where his brother was. So it's no different. So use them to your advantage. But those who don't want to, or those who are still holding on to false doctrines that are not biblically correct. And what we're showing you is that these instruments and the method in which they use to determine what new moon was is no different from what we use today. It's the exact same thing.
Exactly. That's a good point. I remember that too, because like I said, at one point we were waiting to spot the new moon. And then we said the next day was new moon day. So we was at that point at one time as well. So it's been a constant learning process when we came into the understanding of actually following the luminaries. So this is not something that has just happened overnight. We had to grow into this understanding. And that's why,
Exactly.
again, Daniel 12:4 says that in the last day, knowledge shall increase. So when we came into the understanding, myself, I've been keeping it like this for about 9 years. So this is something that came, was a gradual increase of the understanding as well. So like I said, I used to go out and I used to look for the new moon on the evening of new moon, and now I don't tend to do that because I understand the concept of conjunction. And so once you
Absolutely.
get that process down and that understanding, you don't have to go out there and worry about if you're able to see the moon or not, because if we're waiting to see the moon, it can throw your whole can throw everything off. And I want to make the point of that too. Let's pick that up in Enoch 72 and verse 5. And I want to show that, because you have some people that follow the luminaries, and they'll use this scripture here to try to justify first seeing the moon. And I want to bring some understanding on this as well to show that that's still not what the case is. Enoch 72 is where I need to be. Enoch 72 and verse 5.
This is Enoch chapter 72, verse 5, and it reads, "At that time it appears and becomes to you the beginning of the month. 30 days it is with the sun in the gate from which the sun goes forth."
So we have some people that read this scripture here, and it says, "And at the time it appears to you and becomes to you the beginning of the month. 30 days is with the sun in the gate from which the sun goes forth." So they'll say, based on this scripture here, that you have to first wait and see the moon to physically call it new moon day. So let's show that to get the context of this, because we have to understand that this is a conversation between Enoch and the angel Uriel, who's explaining to him or teaching him how the luminaries actually function. So let's pick it up at Enoch 71 in verse 1.
Okay, this is Enoch 71, verse 1.
Pull that up and show
And
that.
okay,
Go ahead.
this is Enoch 71, verse 1, and it reads, "The book of the revolutions of the luminaries of heaven, according to their respective classes, their respective powers, their respective periods, their respective names, the places where they commenced their progress, and their respective months, which Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, explained to me, he who conducted them, the whole account of them according to every year of the world forever, until a new work shall be effected, which will be eternal.
So pick it back up at Enoch 72 and verse 1, because clearly over here we see that this is a conversation between the angel Uriel and Enoch himself. So this is the angel explaining to him or teaching him about the luminaries. So this is what this is talking about. So when we go back over to Exodus, Enoch 72 and verse 1, and we get it in context, we'll see that this is further a conversation between the angel Uriel and Enoch about in reference to the luminaries. Pick it up in verse 1.
This is Enoch 72, verse 1, and it reads, after this law, I beheld another law of an inferior luminary, the name of which is the moon, and the orb of which is as the orb of heaven.
So this is the conversation between Uriel and Enoch. So when we go back to verse 5, read verse 5 again for me, y'all.
This is Enoch 72, verse 5, and it reads, at that time it appears and becomes to you the beginning of the month. 30 days it is with the sun in the gate from which the sun goes forth.
So when it says at the time it appears and becomes to you the beginning of the month, the you in context is talking about Enoch. And this is Uriel telling Enoch or teaching Enoch what the new moon looks like, which is the crescent, which is the first light. Like the scripture said, when the light comes back into it and received into it, on that day it is called it's the first day, it is called the new moon. So this is Uriel explaining this to Enoch. So we can't use this and take this and make this you mean us, because that's not what it's talking about. So and if that was the case, that we would have to first physically see the moon, then that would mean that with both David and Jonathan did in 1 Samuel 20 and verse 5 and verse 18, when they said tomorrow's the new moon without physically seeing it, then that would mean what happened over there is a contradiction of scripture. And we clearly see that that's not the case. So let's pick it up. Go to Ezekiel 46. And I want to show this too, because for those that wait until the next day after spotting the moon, it causes you to actually miss the new moon celebration. So I want to show this as well. Let me pull this up as well. Enoch 46. Ezekiel 46. I'm stuck in Enoch, brother.
All these E's, Enoch, Exodus.
I'm stuck in Enoch. Where my Ezekiel at? Ezekiel, and I want chapter 46, and we start at verse 1.
Okay, this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 46, starting at verse 1, and it reads, thus says Yahuwah Allah, the gate of the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut 6 working days. But on the Sabbath it shall be open, and in the day of the new moon it shall be open.
So the calendar of the Most High is Genesis 1:14, which is a lunisolar calendar. And on that calendar, it consists of 3 types of days. So we have New Moon Day, which is the first day of every biblical month. It must be followed by 6 working days, as it shows right here. And then we have our biblical Sabbath day right there. This is what this is telling us, right? So it's going to further tell us when it's open as far as the celebration is concerned. Pick it up at verse 2.
This is I'm stuck on Enoch, Ezekiel 46, verse 2, and it reads, and the prince shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate without, and shall stand by the post of the gate. And the priest shall prepare his burnt offering and his peace offering, and he shall worship at the threshold of the gate. Then he shall go forth, but the gate shall not be shut until the evening.
So it says the gate shall not be shut until the evening, because the evening is the ending part of every biblical day. The day starts at the rising of the sun, and this is the 12 hours of light called day. So when the evening comes, the gate is now shut, meaning that the celebration of the new moon as well as the Sabbath is now over, because they're both celebrated during the daylight hours. And pick it up at verse 3, y'all.
It's verse 3, and it reads, likewise, the people of the land shall worship at the door of this gate before Yahuwah in the Sabbaths and in the new moon.
So in the Sabbaths and in the new moons. So clearly it says that the gate would not be shut until the evening. So the evening constitutes the ending part of the day. So I want to show that real quick as well. I'm not trying to be long on this, but we want to give this edification as far as the Sabbath is concerned. So pick it up at Genesis 1 and verse 5. Verse 5,
Genesis 1, verse 5.
Genesis 1, verse 5. Because this is the scripture where the misunderstanding as far as when a day starts at this particular verse. This is the foundation for evening to evening. So we want to show that this is absolutely wrong according to scripture.
This is Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, and it reads, and the Lord called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day.
So he says, and Yahuwah called the light day. So this is what he called the light part of it. He called it day. And the darkness he called night, right? So it says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So let's first go to get the Strong's Concordance for day. And I want to show that as well. So let me pull that up. I want to show that. So day, this is Genesis 1 and 5. So read that for me, y'all.
This is Strong's Concordance day, Strong's 31:17. Day as opposed to night, 24-hour period as defined by evening and morning in Genesis 1, as a division of time, a working day, a day's journey, day's lifetime, time period, temporal reference, today, yesterday, tomorrow.
So right here, the word day in Genesis 1 and 5, it says that it's a 24-hour period. So that's 12 hours of light called day and 12 hours of darkness called night. A complete biblical day is a 24-hour period. It starts at the rising of the sun. It says as defined as evening and morning right here. So it says, again, a division of time. That division of time is the 12 hours of light called day and the 12 hours of darkness called night. It says, so right there, the 24-hour period. John 11 and 9, Hamashiach says it's but 12 hours in the day. Absolutely. He's talking about a division of time, and he's talking about the daylight portion of the day. This is what he's talking about, the daytime. So when he says it's but 12 hours in the day, absolutely, that's what he's talking about. But he's talking about in the 12 daylight hours. So I'm going to go and I want to show this real quick, and we'll be closing with this. Genesis 1 and 5, like I said, the misunderstanding is evening and morning is the first day. So this is the definition of Strong's Concordance for evening. And we see clearly in scripture, this is Genesis 1 and 5. And this is the word evening. So by Strong's definition, which is 6153, evening simply means evening or night, sunset, right? So that's what it means. Evening is immediate. Evening comes, it's immediate. Sunset is when evening comes, and it's immediately followed by 12 hours of darkness called night, just like Genesis 1 and 5 says. So that's the understanding of that as well. So when we go back into the Strong's Concordance for the word day, for the word morning rather, we pull that up also, Genesis 1 and 5, and we see here, Genesis 1 and 5, and we see that the word is morning, and we see that this word is Strong's Concordance 1242, and it means morning, it means break of day, it means coming of daylight, it means coming of sunrise, and right here it says beginning of day. So says, is it but 12 hours in a day? Absolutely. He's talking about the daylight portion. So when David and Jonathan said tomorrow is the new moon, tomorrow is the modern term for morrow. So right there, it said tomorrow is the new moon, meaning the next day. So we see clearly in scripture that Genesis 1 and 5 is taken out of context, and we see that the day, by definition alone, as far as that Genesis 1 and 5 is concerned, the word evening simply means sunset or night. It's immediately followed by 12 hours of darkness called night. So I just wanted to go into that and show that as well. So again, closing with this is that, again, when it comes to conjunction and understanding conjunction, two things to understand is that a biblical day, a biblical month can either be a 29-day month or a 30-day month, as the scriptures are saying, right? So when we look at this, again, by definition of it is when the two celestials meet at the least point, right? So right here you see 29 day, that's the last day of the month. The 30th day is the last day of the month. So regardless of what month it is, whether it's a 29 or a 30-day month, the very next day after the 29-day month, by default, is new moon day. The very next day after the 30-day month, by default, is new moon day as well. So that is the process of conjunction, and that enables all of us to be on the same accord when it comes to determining when new moon day is without having to physically see it. And we went into Enoch, and we saw when Enoch says, when it appears to you, and we saw that clearly that was a conversation that took place between the angel Uriel and Enoch himself. And Uriel was teaching Enoch what the luminaries look like and what he should look for and what he should consider to be the new moon. Sirach 43 verse 8 says, the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument to the armies above, shining in the firmament. Enoch picked it up and said, on the first day when the light is received into it, it is the new moon. So tomorrow being February 28th, 2025 is New Moon Day, which is celebrated during the 12 hours of light called day, like Hamashiach said in John 11 and verse 9. So this causes us to be able to keep the new moon on the same, within the same 24-hour period, and also enables us to celebrate the new moon when it actually takes place. Like we read in Ezekiel 46, verse 1-3, the gate to the temple is open in the day of the new moon and on the Sabbath day. The gate shuts in the evening, which evening simply means sunset, which is followed by 12 hours of darkness called night, like Genesis 1 and 5 said. So for those that keep the Sabbath according to the calendar of the Most High, Genesis 1:14. Again, today, Shabbat Shalom. This is the last Sabbath of the 11th biblical month, being the 29th day, also being conjunction. And so I pray that what we brought out as far as conjunction, the understanding of it, gave some understanding as well as some edification. And like I said, this is a process that we have to grow into. This is not something that we learn overnight. But it does enable us to be able to keep the new moon on the exact same time, regardless to where we're at. I'm in Africa. The sun is going to rise here for me tomorrow at the rising of the sun first. The brother is in Texas, in the United States. The same sun that I see will be the same sun he sees. So when the sun reaches his location, it's going to be new moon day for him as well. So we just wanted to go into scripture and show that. And also I want to say this too. Using, like, we went into Jasher and it was talking about the map of the stars and the instrument. Also, when we go into timeanddate.com, timeanddate.com tells us tomorrow that sunrise is at 6:28 a.m. and the moon rises at 6:40 along with the sun. So when we read on conjunction, it says on the night prior, the sun as well as the moon sets in the west. When it rises in the east. So between those time frames, that's a 28-minute difference. And when we get to the sunset for tomorrow as well, the sun is setting at 1842, which is at 6:42 p.m. The moon sets at 1910, which is 7:10 p.m. That is also a 28-minute difference right there. So we have a 28-minute window in order to where we can see the new moon, which is the crescent, being the first light. So we can use these tools as timeanddate.com and all of these moon apps and all that. We can use these as tools to help us further get an understanding of the scriptures. But first and foremost, we go into the scriptures, and the scriptures gives us the understanding. Like it says in Psalms 119, 104, through thy precepts you get understanding, therefore we hate every false way. So that's we just wanted to go on the scripture and give that. You have anything you want to say in closing on that, Art?
Yes, just one last thing. For those of you who may be straddling the fence as it relates to the Gregorian calendar and the calendar of the Most High and using these other books, don't let someone tell you because these books are not canonized and they're not authorized scripture per se, if you will, that you don't have a right to delve into these books and look within these texts to get some understanding. And sometimes what that means, you have to turn off the noise. That's a lot of noise, keeping you blinded to the truth. And sometimes you have to turn off all the noise and all these distractions and seek the truth for yourself. Don't let someone lead you into believing something and they can't give you biblical scripture resonant historical references and documentation to help support and back what they say. Well, that's just how we do things here. That's not good enough. And many of you all are holding on to that because it's popular. Everybody's doing it, so it has to be right. We say this all the time when it comes to these dispelling and ruling out these false doctrines, and many of y'all are straddling the fence. So if that's you, don't be afraid to delve into the Jubilees and the Jashers and the Enochs and these books of that nature to get some understanding. There's a wealth of knowledge, there's a wealth of information in there. And once you come to the knowledge of it, you realize that you've been deceived. And that's how he and the brother and I were. We were like caught up in this for a while until the Most High woke us up to the truth. And we was able to delve into these other books to get the understanding. So if that's you, break away from that nonsense because that's what it is. It's a bunch of nonsense. And actually seek the truth out for yourself. You'd be surprised at what you find.
Exactly. And the scripture says for us to work out our own soul salvation with fear and trembling. So it's not about the congregation fellowship and all that. And like I say all the time, it makes no sense to sacrifice truth for fellowship. So as we work out our own soul salvation, the scriptures say exactly what they say, and it's precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So with that, we say shalom.
Shalom.
Shallow to the one, brother.
It's still showing that it's still recording.